Hey guys, welcome back to another Watcher of Realms video. If you guys have been following the channel at all for a long time, you know that I like to do tier lists. Tier lists are some of my favorite content to make. It's a little less work on the editing side, and I love to just yap. You know, I love talking about the game. I really like the game for obvious reasons, and you know, I love doing this. So I've been doing an updated Lord tier list since Iovar came out, which is a very long time ago. And recently, Rygar got released. And Rygar, I think, is really good. Just as a little bit of a spoiler there. But I also have changed my mind on a decent amount of the lords in this list. There are quite a few that I used to think were better, or I used to think were worse, that now I have changed my opinion and I think are a little better, or maybe even the same, right? So I just figured I'd go through them. Obviously, we got tiers here as well, ranging from meta changing. These are like the heroes where like you have to have them, and if you have them, they basically break the game in some area, one way or another. You got very strong, which are like if you pull these at all, you're very happy. They're really good, and whether or not they're the strongest in an area that matters, or they're not really like the strongest, at the end of the day, they're amazing to have. Average is like, you know, you pull them and you're like, they're pretty good. You're happy with having them, but they're not really going to change the game as much as the people above them. We got subpar. These are like the lords that you're not really excited to have, but they have some uses. And then needs a buff are like the units where clearly they don't really fulfill any specific role, or they're just really underpowered. They need to be stronger. Currently in the current state of the game, they're not really worth having. That's what needs a buff is for. This tier list is obviously going to be subjective as hell. It's going to be completely opinionated, and you do not have to agree with me at all. And I will be following some specific criteria. Mainly the things that I look for are one of two things. Is the hero, or the lord in this case, the best in an important piece of content? And then are they good in multiple pieces of content? Those are two things I am heavily looking at. If it's a lord where you literally will not use them at all in most things in the game, they're going to be a lot lower than someone you have to have for certain pieces of content. Also, I am an end game player, so this is going to be a little bit more of an end game perspective. Stuff like Venoma, just to kind of, you know, mention one that is going to be ranked a lot lower. They are amazing for progression. The Lord skill is amazing for progression, but they will not rank very highly because the second you get out of early to mid game, they become garbage. That's just how it goes. And there's a lot of criteria to go over and a lot of things to take into account. I will be looking at Lord skills and the unit themselves. So if amazing Lord skill, bad unit is going to be lower than someone who's a pretty good Lord skill and a pretty good hero, just because, you know, you got to average it out. Either way, to start off, I mean, I kind of already mentioned her. Venoma needs a buff. Venoma is a contender for the worst lord in the game. It's not really that close. There are other options, obviously, that you could definitely say are worse or in the conversation for being worse. But currently, Venoma does not have a use past progression. She is only a progression champ, or basically, if you do not have a legendary lord, then you're going to have some value from her. That's it, right? She's not specifically the best for anything. She's not really that great as a lord skill. Her lord skill is really weird, where it will actually kind of affect everyone on your entire team with getting their ults up fast. So she's good for speedruns, I'll give her that. But like, it's such a small thing, especially when she's the worst lord as a unit. She's by far the worst lord as a unit. It is not close. She is garbage. Apart from like grade 1-18 and below, you are never going to use her as a unit. She is garbage. It's like a 0 for freaking as a unit, and then like a 3 out of 10 for her lord skill. She's the worst. It is not close. It is bad. On the other end of the spectrum, I'm kind of going through the obvious ones here. I like to do it really chaotically. There's no specific order to these rankings. Let's go to Praetussy. He's the best lord in the game. I'm gonna get him out of the way early because we all know it. He's debatably the best hero. If not, he's in the conversation. He is the ultimate end game enabler, and he's one of the ultimate end game units. He has one of the best lore skills in the entire game, if not the best. He empowers some of the best units in the entire game, and he is also one of the strongest single target units in the game and can do decent work with AoE. He's also part of Arbiters, which are always units that have some sort of thing with true damage or radiant erosion or something along those lines. He has some of the best true damage in the entire game. It's insane. True damage in this game is by far the strongest source of damage. It is not close. It goes through defense and resistances and everything. It's always going to do a specific amount of damage. And in a game like Watcher of Realms, it is so valuable. He's just freaking disgusting. He's one of, if not, a contender for the best unit in Arena. Same with Guild. Same with a lot of different Codex bosses. Sure, he might not be the best in those areas, but he's one of the best in those areas. Same with, any progression content. The gear raids, demolished by him. The freaking, Void Rift, he's usable everywhere. He has an cross-map true damage that does insane damage with his Lord skill. And he buffs his Arbiters 50% every time you click it, which is insane. Guild Boss 2, he's like the best one. If not, second to something like a Torodor, which we're going to get to later. He's amazing. You could even find uses in places he shouldn't be good in, like Guild Boss 1. It's insane. He's stupid strong, by far the best Lord in the game. Maybe not by far, because Ingrid is also there. I gotta place Ingrid there now, because they are just two peas in a pod. You want to have both. The end game for this game is you want to aim for getting Praetussy and Ingrid. Once you get to that point, you could start focusing on other things. But you have to have Praetussy and Ingrid if you want to contend in any sort of PvP content and any sort of end game content. I will say, Ingrid is somewhat capped by her range, especially early game. You're not going to find a lot of uses for her compared to end game. But the second you start getting into late to end game, she becomes debatably the most valuable unit you could ever have, because she is insane in Arena, Guild, Codex, anything end game. And you could even use her in other things otherwise, like Guild Boss 2. She's not the most meta, but she's insanely strong. The thing with Ingrid that does make her worse than Praetussy, though, because as a unit for endgame stuff, she is more important. She's more valuable. Her score is going to be higher. In Arena, Guild, she makes these strategies. Pope does not in the same way. So you might be thinking, maybe it's kind of close. But then you have to take into account a couple things. One is Ingrid is dual faction. She's the only dual faction Lord. Arbiter, she is not the Lord for, but she is part of the faction. And the thing about Ingrid is she's so good because of Praetussy. She's not as good if you do not have him. Obviously, she's quite strong, but I kind of compare it as Ingrid's at 70% to 80% strength with no Praetussy. And when you get Praetussy, she gets all the way up to that 120% strength, and she becomes too strong. She is very contingent on Praetussy. Also, Watchguard, inherently as a faction, is worse than Arbiters. That's just how it goes. In the current state of the game, with content, Watchers are amazing. They're good, especially with Wukong coming out. They're much better. But they do not compare to Arbiters in any way. And that is a big thing. So Ingrid, in my opinion, is the second best Lord. The obvious picks out of the way, let's go somewhere a little less obvious, and that is going to be Solcadens. I love Solcadens. I think Solcadens is amazing. I have so much fun with him. The thing is, Infernals, despite getting some decent Infernals, like Lyra's pretty decent, Lord Phineas is pretty good, Xena's pretty good. The thing is, all of these new Infernals, I feel like are not enough to really offset the power creep that they're getting. So I really don't want to do this. I think Solcadens is like an average lord, purely because his faction is kind of shit right now. Honestly, that's just how it goes. They're good at Guild Boss 1, a little in Guild Boss 2, but the thing is, Guild Boss 2 is so power crept right now that everyone is good for Guild Boss 2. Now, Nightmare 5 is coming out sometime this year, and I hear that magic damage and physical damage, you're going to need to have both in a team. Solcadens is most likely, if not guaranteed, to be insanely meta for that. So you're going to want like a Solcadens and a Torodor, or a Solcadens and a Rygar or something. That's kind of the way it's looking. So I can foresee him going up to very strong. If not, I think he'll stay very strong. I think he's high average, low strong. I know this is going to piss people off, but let's say, what is he really especially good at? Boss killing. You want to know what we don't need in this game right now? Boss killing, because almost all of these lords are key boss killers. They're amazing boss killers. When you compare it to everyone else here, I mean, we got Valderon, Iovar, we got freaking like Torodor and Rygar. It's just, it's already something, especially with stuff like Wukong coming out, where Solcadens obviously is not the faction for. You're not going to get as much use out of him because the stuff he's good at, he's frankly been power crept a little bit, and a lot of the new heroes that are coming out for his faction are not strong enough to offset the damage done to his faction. He's still amazing, and I love him. He's great. You can have crazy strategies for like Gear Dungeon 2 and stuff. I love him. I can't put him any higher. I'm really, really sorry. Harz, though, I fucking hate Harz. I'm sorry to swear, but like, I have Harz. He's still level 1. I have not used him once because he's just bad. Hear me out here. People are gonna say he's higher and he deserves to be higher. I think not. The thing is, Harz is, as a unit, one of the worst tanks you can place down, and as a lord, for everything that you would use his lord skill for, Isolde or Isolde does almost the exact same thing, to the point where you don't really need him, because the only time you really, really desperately need a Northerner lord is for stuff like Gear Dungeon 1 for your Valkyria or something. And you want to know who works almost as well? Isolde, who is an epic. Harz is basically paper. He's paper. If you're going to go into like Guild v Guild and you're going to try to use Harz as a tank, do not do it. He sucks. You cannot keep him alive past anything but like towards the lower ranks in Guild v Guild, to the point where he's functionally garbage. In stuff like even Tank Codex, he's not as good as Isolde because he does not have extra block in his abilities. So what you'll see at really, really high freaking Tank Codex things is they won't even use Harz because he doesn't bring enough value to separate himself from the epic lord of his faction. There aren't really any lords in the entire game that have that issue. He needs to be buffed. His awakenings are garbage. He's kind of mid. He's just not great. And Northerners especially don't really need it much anymore to have a Northerner bonus in later game content. And even earlier game content, like I said, Isolde works beautifully for almost anything you would ever use Harz for. Is he going to be something where you'll get like a little bit of a bonus by getting him over the Epic Lord? Maybe. But the thing is, it's such a close thing that he's bad at this point in time. Next, I guess we'll do Morrigan. I think Morrigan is subpar. She's pretty decent in certain areas, especially recently, like Guild v Guild, she has uses, especially if you don't have all of the meta units like Praetussy, Ingrid, blah, 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 right? She's quite good. The thing is, cultists right now are one of the worst factions in the game. There's some really good standout units. Anora is really good. You got Bubba now, who's pretty good, especially for the cursed faction. You know, Cerberus is decent for some things, but like you're not really going to use him. And you can tell that I'm really struggling to think of good cultists because it kind of ends there. Anora, Dahlia is pretty decent. Bubba's kind of good. Reeve is kind of good. Vierna's decent, I guess. Cyrus is decent. I guess. It's just cultist at the point in time is only for like specific AoE content. And in AoE content, at least when you get to endgame, Esotericist is just quite a bit better. And even before that, it's just like you don't really need her much. You know, she has some usage for certain things like Conqueror Codex, where you don't even place her, you just have her boost Cerberus. You know, she has some usage in Guild, like I said. I've seen some pretty solid defenses, but she needs enough awakenings where I don't think it's really something that I could use too much in her favor. She's just currently, look, AoE content is so few and far between that you're really going to use her mostly for like Gear Raid 1, Gear Dungeon 1, and you don't really need her that much for it. She's good, she's not necessary, which is exactly why I'm putting Demi in the same position. I think Morrigan is honestly more valuable in more areas than Demi, but Demi does what she's meant to do so well that I think they're like pretty even. Demi's great for slowing, anti-heal. She has decent Lord bonus. I think Morrigan's is better of a Lord bonus, but Demi's a better unit. That's just kind of how it goes. The thing is, anti-heal has 2 areas in the game. Gear Raid 1, Gear Dungeon 1, and then it's pretty much garbage. GVG, you could say you could tactically use it, maybe, but at the end of the day, she's not good there, really much at all. She has invisibility, you know, she's interesting. The thing is, same issue. Cultists kind of suck. Northerners kind of suck. Infernals kind of suck. You're going to hear that a lot through this video. That's just the state of the game right now. If better heroes enter the cultist faction going forward that are usable in more areas than Gear Raid 1, Gear Dungeon 1, AMR 22, stuff like that, they will go up. They have the potential to go up. They're good lords, but the faction is not good enough. That's just how it goes. Moving on though, we have Aracha. Aracha is going to be kind of a controversial one because she's slowly been coming out of favor recently. I think she's like very low, very strong. Just because the thing that a lot of people who, when they see me speak very highly of Aracha, they go, well, Iovar is so much better. I don't use my Aracha. If you don't have a Iovar, which is the only condition, you're going to use Aracha for almost everything. She's one of the most usable lords in most things. And the thing is, Piercers as a whole are such strong faction, and they get so much better from Aracha's Lord bonus, from Lunaria's Lord bonus, from any Piercer Lord's Lord bonus. The extra range is just so nice, and she gives extra damage with it. She's a pretty decent ground unit. You could use her a lot of areas. I've used her in Guild Boss 1, Guild Boss 2. She's usable in Air Arena. Even if you have a good Nyx with high awakenings, you could use her in AoE Arena. She has a lot of areas where she could be very good. The one thing, once again, is Iovar is just quite a bit better in every way. Aracha can be kind of a mediocre unit, but her Lord bonus is so good for a faction that is really, really good right now and has always been really, really good. I mean, Silas, Hex, stuff like that. I think she deserves very strong, but she's kind of on the lower end because a lot of lords have been getting a lot better. Speaking of, Torodor's meta changing. He's amazing. He's by far, and I've been saying this for months, he's by far the best the best non-ancient exclusive lord in the game. It is not close, and the gap has only been getting wider. Nightmare faction is the faction that is getting the most units as often as possible. They keep getting new units, and they keep being OP. We got Kagiri, we got Wukong, we got Yuri, who's actually not bad. She's not amazing, but she's new, and she's solid. There's so many freaking Nightmare units. It's insane. They have 32 units, and a lot of them are good. Twyla's really good. Wukong's really good. Freaking Hatsit's amazing. Volca got buffed a while ago, but she's so strong because of it. Arrogance is in this faction. Salazar is even decent in like Arena and stuff. There's so many strong units in this faction, and Torodor buffs them to the moon. It is insane how good of a lord he is, and him being a tank usually would bring him down a little bit, because tanks, you know, you don't really need a tank as a lord, right? you'd rather have a DPS like an Ingrid or a Praetussy or a Iovar or something. But Torodor is a good unit, especially for GVG, guild versus guild. I know I'm going to be talking about guild versus guild a lot in this video, but it is the current most endgame content in the game, and he is debatably the second or third best tank for it. He has new exclusive gear, he stuns more often. He's the best lord, if not, you know, top 2 lords for Guild Boss 2. Guild Boss 1 sticks. He's not bad because Wukong's so strong. The new codex he'll have used because Wukong's so strong. The thing is, Wukong changed the game so much that Torodor has become so much better because of it. So has Laya, which I'll go over next. It's just freaking, he was already strong as shit, and then they released the best boss killer in the game, and he's a Nightmare faction, and he's great with Nightmare faction. Torodor is one of the best lords in the game because of it, and he already kind of was. He is a definitive SSS meta-changing unit. There's no arguing it. Like, I implore you guys to try to argue against it in the comments. You're wrong. Like, this is just objective fact here. Whatever. We move on, and Laya is very strong right now because of Wukong. Like, I want to give her average, high average, like around Solcadens, but the fact of the matter is, while she's not the best lord for Wukong, the thing is, every boss content in the game, you put Wukong with a legendary lord of any kind, and you destroy that content, and it's gone. It's back. It's in the rubble. That's just it, right? She's not that crazy, and I'm putting her low, very strong. Maybe you could argue she's below Solcadens, which I would agree with you a little bit, I think. Actually, I might put her here. But she's very good. She's the most meta in a lot of codex. She's really good in boss areas purely because of who she boosts. Watcher, while it's not the best faction in the game, has been getting steadily better over time. There's a lot of good things for her to buff, and as a unit, she's pretty damn good. She's really quite good. But the thing is, once again, she's not like the best unit, and she's not part of the best faction, and she doesn't have the best lord skill. So it's like I kind of have to put her high average, low strong. It's just Wukong's such a game-breaking unit that it's hard to rank her because of it, because he's part of her faction. Moving on, I should probably talk about one of these unnameable units. Previously, I've treated them as essentially having no lord bonus, so therefore they're half of a unit and they have a lot of ground to make up. In this ranking, I think I'm going to change it up a little bit because it's not really fair that inherently their design is different than the rest of these lords. These guys are coded as lords when it comes to like Ancient Summoning Pity, so that's why they're here. And I have to rank them as what they are and not what they could be, you know? All of these other lords have lord bonuses. They have factions attributed to them. These unnameable units are just units part of the factions. So I need to rank them as a unit more than what they do. They do have like a semi-lord boost where they increase damage when they're on the team. And you can only have one of the two on the team. And one of the three when the next one comes out. I don't know if that'll happen or when that'll happen. But currently, Ymerit's very strong. Ajax is very strong. As units. For endgame, because once again I'm an endgame player. These are some of the stronger units. They have a surprising amount of uses outside of stuff like Guild v Guild and Arena, where they're both in the most meta teams. They're by far the best option for the teams that are being made for endgame content, but they even have a lot of usage outside of that. I love to use Ajax and Ymerit in boss content. Ajax is great because he buffs the team with the unnameable boost, the ancient blood or whatever the hell it's called, and then he puts magic resistance onto whatever's near him. You could place him very strategically. He fills in a great amount of times. Ymerit is great for a lot of things. I mean, progression, he's amazing. He's so good. But even beyond that point, you could use him in areas like Guild Boss 2. He's good for stunning. He's good for APOC 1. Like, I know it's not the greatest content to talk about their uses then, but my point is they're very versatile when you get to use them. The main issue with them is no one has them until they get into late game, but that's not a bad thing because they're amazing late game. So they're really good, and while they don't have Lord bonuses, so it's a little hard to rank them, I do think they're very, very strong units right now. Elddr, though. Let's talk about someone who's a little mediocre. I think Elddr's subpar, but he's better than Harz. And the reason why this is if you're kind of in a very limited situation where you don't have a ton of the really SSS tier lords or really good boss killing lords, and you need like an option, Elddr can do decent damage. I mean, you could use him with an Ardea, you could use him with Glacius and stuff, and he has some uses. I actually think I'm gonna put him at the bottom. The thing is, he's also just not good. He's not bottom 3, bottom 4, or whatever. He's like around there. The thing is, Elddr's such an enigma because he's an ancient exclusive lord. He's by far the worst ancient exclusive lord. At least Demi's good at what she does. It's just she doesn't have enough use cases. Elddr's like okay everywhere, but he's not good anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, you could use him a lot. It's just Northern faction isn't geared for damage for a lot of the time. When you're using Northerners, you're not using them for damage. And if you're using them for damage, you're just going out of your way. If you have other lords, obviously, if you're limited, he's good. But you're just going out of your way not to use the other much better lords, right? So that's where he falls apart. He's just not great. Moving on, Cyrus. This one's going to hurt me the most. I have to put him top of very strong. I want to put him meta changing. I really, really do. I love Cyrus. I think he's insanely strong. The fact of the matter is, there's at least 6 lords better than him now. And it's just, there's not much to be argued there. Esotericist is a very good faction, but they're not amazing compared to some of the better, more meta factions in this game. And then, beyond that point, he's a good unit, but tanks are inherently less valuable. He's amazing in Guild v Guild. He's the best tank in Guild v Guild in some options. Eso is very meta in Guild v Guild. That's where you're going to use him the most. But something like Arena, he's been power equipped to hell. You could use him still, and he's great for certain Boreas Comet teams. The thing is not as valuable as it used to be. There's not a lot of AoE content, which is what Eso is mostly for. So you're not going to be using him too often. He's great for where you can use him, for sure. He's a great unit as well. You could use him as a damage dealer. You could use him as a tank. He's great. Please don't let me not putting him in the top tier make you guys go, oh, he's not great. I don't want to pull for him. You do want to pull for him. He's amazing. He's so good, but he's not meta changing anymore. And it really sucks. And this is the one I'm the most hurt by. Maybe Solcadens not being higher as well. I'm pretty hurt by, but the fact of the matter is, I can't put him higher. Iovar, though, Iovar's up there. I think Iovar might be worse than Torodor now. They're like, the thing is, they're two so very different units, and that's kind of the inherent difficulty with these types of rankings, is all of these units do such different roles that it's kind of hard to rank them against each other because they do such different things. I think these two are around the same level. It purely depends on the content you're doing. But either way, they're meta changing. Piercer, like I said, with the case of Aracha, Piercer's like one of the better factions. Sure, Piercer is heavily carried by the units that are in them, but they're by far the most versatile lords in the game, and they're usable in the most areas by far. It's not close. You're going to be using Iovar in almost all content in the game, or you could use him in all content in the game. GVG, he's not great at high level, but he has a lot of uses in lower levels. Arena, he's amazing. He's not the best unit, but he's amazing. Stuff like progression, pretty much all progression, you're going to use him a lot. Like Codex, he has a lot of uses. He's the best lord. No, second best now that Wukong comes out. He's the second best lord for sticks. Best if you're just coming into it without an A5 Wukong or whatever. You know what I mean? He's the best lord for Pelagios Codex. He's usable everywhere. He's good everywhere. He might not be the best unit in more than a couple areas, but Piercer is so good right now, especially because they have some of the best units like Silas, blah, blah, blah. So he deserves meta changing. So does Valderon as well. I think Valderon's like around the same level as Iovar. The thing is, Valderon's nowhere near the level of Torodor, which is where this kind of gets a little wonky. So I'm going to just put him here. Valderon's really good. he does crazy damage. The thing is, single target arena, he still kind of needs awakenings and certain things to deal with really good Praetussy comps and really good Nightmare comps now. He's still by far the best there, best lord there, and he has some uses in Guild. The thing is, Valderon as a progression unit is amazing. He's godlike. He's insane for progression. But once you kind of settle into an area where you're just using the best units for what they're best at, you're rarely going to be using Valderon. The guild bosses, he's not as good as the other options. You know, boss content, he's a great boss killer, but he's so selfish that you're really only using him. And in stuff like Arena, there's just other options as well. And the main issue I have with Valderon in late game content is if you look at Ingrid, you look at Praetussy, you want their awakenings because they're the strongest units. But even if they're both A0, you're going to get so much value out of them, and they're going to be still the best units in their respective areas where they're the best. But Valderon and stuff like Guild and Arena and stuff really need his A3. And it kind of sucks because to say that you need an A3 to compare with the units above you, it's just, he has to be lower, in my opinion. Obviously, I know people are going to come out and say, he's a top 5 unit in the game. He's not even a top 5 lord, because Rygar is better than Torodor for most things. For Guild, he's worse, but you can still use him to varying degrees of success. The thing is, for everything that Torodor is great at, there's one issue that holds Torodor back the most, that Rygar just kind of does a step above, and that's purely that Torodor is dead weight for most content. You're not going to be using him as a unit, you're not placing him down, and you're not getting much value out of him. For Guild Boss 2, he's great as a tank, and he does, you know, stuns, which is great. He does damage reduction, which is great. But you want to know what Rygar does? Stuns, damage reduction, and does really good damage. And he does pretty similar, if not almost exactly the same, of a Lord skill. The issue that people have with Rygar is he's an age-exclusive Lord, while Torodor is not. So obviously most people are going to have Torodor, and if you have Torodor, you don't really need Rygar. But if you have Torodor, you're going to want Rygar, or you're going to be happy if you pull Rygar, because he's just a little better for a lot of things. It's complicated. At the end of the day, Torodor dead weight for a lot of things, like boss content, of course. For things like a lot of codexes where you might use him, he's not going to be that great. Rygar is going to be better. That's just how it is, right? Rygar is better for Arena because he actually does damage. Sure, he's not going to get placed for the end, but like I said, the Lord skill is so similar that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? So that he needs to be placed. So it's just like Nightmare units, Nightmare faction is one of the best factions in the game. He has to be up here. So Valderon, unfortunately, is not top 5 anymore, in my opinion. Obviously, once again, only my opinion. I'm saving Twinfiend for the end. I don't know if you guys noticed, because it's my biggest hot take. Ghan, I think, is just worse than Cyrus. Cyrus is a better unit. Cyrus is, you know, more usable now. Chaotix have not fallen off. It's just a lot of what you use Chaotix for, you don't really use a Lord too much. He's great for Conqueror Codex. He has some use in GVG if you're in lower levels. Once you get to Overlord, he is garbage. He's really bad. The thing is, his passive doesn't even trigger properly, and you can kill him with axes instantly, and then he's dead weight. He's decent in some areas. It's just like, Valderon's better because Valderon's a unit that you can use. Same kind of thing as Rygar. It's like Lord bonus, Ghan is better than Valderon, but overall Valderon's quite a bit better than Ghan. That's just how it goes. Twinfiend is my hot take. I think he needs a buff. At the end of the day, Twinfiend is probably here as a unit. I mean, not as a unit. Overall, Twinfiend's probably here, maybe here. He's like around the cultist units. But the thing is, he's so in need of a buff right now that I don't know. I don't think Twinfiend's good. The thing is, his faction's not great, and him as a unit is ass. It's just you have to place him down to get value out of his Lord skill. So people tend to mistake him being good as a unit when it's really just him being decent as a Lord. The thing is, he stops all of your units for doing damage, and all of the recent units that have been released, like Lord Phineas and the new Infernals, they all get more use out of not getting impaired by Twinfiend. They all want to be attacking. The thing is, Twinfiend's just so, like, you don't really notice his impact much anymore because the impact is still kind of there by him not doing his Lord skill. You know what I mean? Like, he deserves to be better than Elddr, I think. But also, what are you using Twinfiend for? Certain niche boss content, like Void Rift, Guild Boss 1. He has some using Guild Boss 2, but so does almost every Lord on this list, and they do it better. It's just like, he needs a buff. He needs a buff. I'm putting him down here whether or not he deserves to be here, because the fact of the matter is, and I know I've been saying that a lot, he needs a buff. He needs a buff. Please, Moonton, buff these three. They need it so bad. Buff Elddr while you're at it. Buff the Cultist faction. I don't care. Make Infernals great again. I don't know. It's just, there's such a defined, these units, very strong and meta changing, you want them no matter what, except maybe Aracha if you have Iovar. If you don't have Iovar, you're gonna want her. It's complicated. Okay, the rankings are hard, but at the end of the day, if you pull one of these, you're happy, unless obviously you have Iovar for Aracha, or you have Valderon for Ghan, in which, but you'd still be kind of happy about Ghan. It's just like all these units at the bottom. Maybe Solcadens is the exception, or if you don't have the other Lord for the faction, you don't really care about these. These are not, okay, these are not units people seek out unless they're some of their favorite units. These units are units that you seek out. That's kind of how it goes. So if you pull any of these at the top, you're happy. And that's the ranking. Please let me know if you agree or not. At this current stage of the game, every Lord is good or usable at the end of the day, but some are better than others, and this is my final rank. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know where you think I went wrong, where you think I went right, and yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it a ton, and Destined signing out.